In case there's anybody I can't see on the screen right now, I'm Helen Fein. I'm from Auburn. I'm one of Mountain Stream's community Dharma leaders, and I'm very happy to be here. My talk tonight is on the subject of cultivating concentration and how concentration has a built-in joy to it. And I'll be talking about concentration and vipassana, the difference, the relationship. So I think I'll start with talking about vipassana a little bit. We use that word, we don't always know what it means. So just let's get really clear. Vipassana means seeing things as they are. But what does that mean? In the teachings, it's often interpreted to mean that we understand and observe the three universal marks of existence, which are suffering or unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and no self. So as we are mindful, as we look around, if we are seeing things as they are, we see those things. We see that people are suffering. We see that we ourselves may be suffering. We see that everything is temporary. And gradually over time, we may come to see that the idea we have of ourself is an illusion. So I have a joke. I have a joke for you. Suffering, impermanence, and no self walk into a bar. Suffering says, "Hey, this place is lousy." Impermanence says, "Don't worry, that'll change." And no self says, "Are you talking to me?" We don't get enough Dharma jokes. A more simplified, yeah? What'd you say?
I said that was funny.
Oh, good. I always like that joke. So Vipassana is in the Dharma often seen as being able to see those three things, but in a more simplified way, it's really being mindful, isn't it? Just seeing things as they are in a moment to moment, in every moment of our lives, staying awake, observing what's going on around us, observing other people, the environment, especially observing ourselves, what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. And of course, we're going to fall asleep and not do any of that from time to time, probably frequently. But we make the effort to be awake, and we keep coming back and reminding ourselves we wake up, we come back, we see things as they are. That's our practice. And that's what Vipassana really is. Now then there's concentration, and that's different. But the two are closely related, and they contribute to one another. And it has been said that the great strength of Buddhism over some other, comparatively with other spiritual practices, may be that the way that it combines those two and the way they work with each other. So concentration, it plays a very large role in Buddhist practice. It's on a couple of the big lists, so I never miss a chance to show one of the lists. So I'll just share my screen. I'm going to show you the 7 factors of enlightenment. You can see that? Thumbs up? Good. So there are the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is Maeve's favorite list. So if you like to listen to Maeve's talk, you've seen this list, I'm sure. And I like it. starting to understand why she likes it so much. But these are the factors that go into becoming enlightened. And concentration is, we start with being mindful, we investigate whatever it is that our mindfulness shows us, we bring energy and effort to it, and this gives us a certain amount of joy. And there's tranquility and peacefulness. And there's the concentration. All these other factors come together and we're able to concentrate. And when we concentrate, we can move into a state of equanimity. And I try not to underestimate equanimity. It is the most beautiful state. If you've heard Tony Bernhard teach, he says that equanimity is enlightenment. And I see exactly what he means by that. It's this beautiful state of all things being equal, where we don't have strong opinions one way or the other. We see all sides of the situation, and we're at peace. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, and very pleasant state, equanimity. So that's where we see concentration on these 7 factors of enlightenment. If you want to be enlightened, you need to have some concentration. The other important list that we find concentration on is the list of the Eightfold Path. You can see that? Good. So let me make it a little bit bigger. So the Eightfold Path, concentration is kind of the top of the whole thing. It's where we're headed with all of this. So we start out with wise view or wise understanding. In other words, we see that seeing things as they are is going to take us someplace that we want to go. And we intend to practice that. And that leads to a certain kind of conduct. We conduct ourselves with wise speech, wise action, and wise livelihood. And this leads to the area of concentration. We make an effort, we become mindful, and we enter a state of concentration. And that is what the Buddha said is the Eightfold Path to enlightenment. So there's concentration. Again, very, very important in the Dharma teachings as a state that we all need to learn how to get into and work with. So tonight, my point that I want to make is that concentration is often accompanied by joy. And I think if I just leave meditation for a minute and talk about things that we do in daily life, you'll know what I'm talking about. When I'm writing, I just have the most beautiful time. If I can get really concentrated on what I'm writing, I enter this wonderful state. They call it the zone. Get into the zone. Or if I'm drawing, the same thing. And that's just concentration. It's very, very pleasurable to have a mind that stays put and doesn't get distracted. I've even heard teachers say that although monks are denied the pleasure and joy of sexual relations, instead they have the pleasure and joy of deep concentration. I thought that was a very interesting point, that likens the pleasure of concentration to some of the great pleasures of life. So let's look at what concentration is. What's concentration? I always like to, you know me, if I give a talk without a dictionary definition, it's probably some imposter pretending to be me. So if we look up at dictionary.com, concentration is defined as exclusive attention to one object. It has the same root as the word concentric. Concentration, concentric circles. There's this center point. You know, I love this image of the concentric circles because it's a visual experience that I have. When I get really concentrated, when I'm sitting, I see these concentric circles that expand and there's a new circle starts in the middle, and then and it goes out to the edges and disappears, and a new circle starts in the middle. And I've heard other people say that they see that same vision when they get really concentrated. These concentric circles, maybe in color. Does anybody else see anything like that, or does anybody else have visions when they are concentrated or meditating? I'd just love to hear. Just take a minute and share. If just unmute yourself and share if you do have anything like that that goes on for you. Any visuals, or maybe auditory. Maybe it's different. Well, it's a gift, and I think it can come later. I think it was some years before it started for me. So watch out for it. I know the great teachers tell us not to make too much of a deal about these effects because they're just sort of like, FX, visual effects, and they're not the same as concentration, but they can be very beautiful and compelling. So more definition. Wikipedia says it's the cognitive process of selectively concentrating on one thing while ignoring other things. Isn't that interesting? While ignoring other things. So, for example, there's something called the cocktail party effect. If you're in a room where there are a lot of people talking, but you're trying to have a conversation with one person, you can selectively tune in the audio of that person and tune out all the other audio. So you have this ability to concentrate on a certain audio stream. I'm going to share my screen again. I want to show you something. So just ignore those little pictures down there. When we do that, when we selectively concentrate on one audio stream and ignore the others, we're actually having a figure ground kind of relationship. The person that we're trying to hear is the figure, and all the other noise becomes the background. So and visually, you've all probably seen this picture before. This is the picture of the figure ground relationship. So when I look at this, what's really interesting about it is that I can see the white vase, or I can see the two black profiles, but I can't really see them both at the same time. My mind has to jump and make one the figure and the other the ground. And then if I want to see the other one, I have to jump and I have to I have to let go of the white vase and focus on the two black profiles. So there's this kind of jumping between one being the figure and then the other being the figure. Figure ground relationship. Concentration always includes a figure ground relationship. We have a foreground. So, say if you're doing a mindfulness of breathing, you keep your breath in the foreground, but everything else is in the background. And there is a background. Lots of other things, some inner monologue, there may be ideas, stories, but they're not grabbing our attention. We don't run off with them. And in the deepest states of concentration, that background really kind of fades away. What I think is interesting is this kind of jump when you look at the white vase and then you look at the black profiles. Your mind has to make kind of a leap between them, and that's a very interesting psychic effect that's going on in your mind. Because to me, that means that the whole figure ground thing is built into the way we think, is built into our consciousness, built into our mind. And so that's really interesting. But that's how our minds work. Here's a famous definition of, well, he called it attention, from William James. This is 1890. Everyone knows what attention is. It is the taking possession by the mind, in clear and vivid form, of one out of what seems several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought. It implies withdrawal from some things in order to deal effectively with others. It's interesting what we have in the foreground. Some things grab our attention, and they grab our attention due in part to our evolutionary history as human beings, and also in part to our cultural history. So, for example, what do I mean by that? Our evolutionary history. We're predisposed to concentrate on emergencies. For example, if there's a car accident, everybody rubbernecks. Everybody slows down and looks, and because it's an emergency, it's a dangerous situation. This is part of our survival mechanisms, that we are predisposed to pay attention to emergencies. And this is why we like the news. We want to watch the news. There's all these emergencies, and they make everything an emergency if you watch the news. I can hardly take it. Crime movies, all of that's about the emergencies that we're psychologically predisposed to want to know more about. And why are we psychologically predisposed? Because it's not that long ago that we were, it's 200,000 years ago, but it's enough that it's still built into us that there could be a lion in the grass over there. And if you see the grass moving, you better wake up, or you're not going to pass your genetic material down to the next generation, because the lion's going to eat your genetic material. So that's a survival mechanism. And the people who are strongest in noticing emergencies were our ancestors, and passed that down to us. About the rubbernecking, when there's an accident on the highway, I always do this, and I just want to pass it on to you. But I feel the same interest in what's happened, and did anybody get hurt, but rather than indulge that in a voyeuristic kind of way, I try to change it to metta. I try to take that energy of the emergency situation and send loving kindness to the people who were in the accident, and hope that they are not hurt, and wish them safe from harm. I think that's a great thing to do when that happens, when you're on the highway. Just tuck that in your back pocket. Maybe it'll be useful. So we are predisposed to emergencies. We're also predisposed to anything new and fast moving. So that's why the news stations have that, that line of type moving across the bottom constantly with the day's new, something totally other than what's on the screen, because it's moving. And when things are moving, we watch them. Same reason, it's the lion in the grass. If it's moving, we got to pay attention. That it's pretty interesting, that line of type at the bottom of the news channels, and sometimes there's 3 different lines of type. It's called a chiron. It's spelled chiron, but it's called a chiron. And that the company that invented it is Chiron, and they're the company that creates those words crawling across the screen. And that word actually got added to, I checked it, to the dictionary in about 2017. You can look it up in Merriam-Webster and also in the OED. So it's a real word now. So anything that moves, anything that changes, we watch. And all this goes back to our being these vulnerable human beings in the forests and tall grasses 200,000 years ago. The person who saw the grass moving was the person who got to pass on their genes to the next generation. So if it moves, we pay attention. So in addition to our cultural and evolutionary heritage pointing our attention in certain directions, causing us to concentrate in certain areas, we also have enormous cultural distractions. Our culture is riddled with invitations to not pay any attention. So apparently, the average American household now has 22 digital devices. So, this morning I grabbed my coffee, my Kindle, and my phone and went and sat down for a half hour. And I do that every morning. My two little digital devices and my coffee. I'm connected, We like to be connected. So I decided to count how many digital devices are in our home. My husband and I, just two people. We have 15. We have two phones, and I'm not counting the old dead ones that are on the counters, on the shelf somewhere. We both have a new Kindle and an old Kindle, because we're readers. We have 4 computers. We have a TV that has internet. We have 2 printers, and we have something called Google Home. So I can say, hey, Google. And it's over there lighting up. It wants to know what I want. It's like Alexa. For those of you who do Alexa, you know what it'll do. Set a timer. So the average American home has 22 digital devices distracting us. We're connected all the time. It's even to the point where sometimes if we're not connected, oh, there's no reception here. We feel something's missing, don't we? When we say that, oh, I have no bars. It's almost like we're not safe if we can't connect. We spend, in this country, 7 hours a day connected. I couldn't believe that. But then I started watching my days. And, lots of people work on computers, so that puts the number high. 42 hours a week. And many people spend 2 hours a day on social media. And I'm not one of them, proud to say. So it's a strange kind of connectedness, isn't it? Because it's kind of a disconnected connectedness, isn't it? Our children in this country have attention deficit disorder. What a phrase, huh? Attention deficit. As meditators, we know exactly what attention deficit is. It's when we check out. There are 6 million children in the U.S. diagnosed with ADHD, and twice as many boys as girls. I thought that was very interesting. And I kind of did a little research to see what they thought the reason for that was. And apparently, girls are more likely to, rather than checking out, to channel it into depression or, sadness, to be more emotional, because I think girls have more permission to be emotional. We are overstimulated. We having 14 devices in the house, 22 devices in the house, increases our anxiety and reduces the joy that we can experience. You can't feel joy if you're worried and rushing around. So how do we recover from a day that is too filled with stimuli? Lots of people turn on the tube and just zone out. and relax, and kind of energy for creative processes just isn't there after a long day of stimulation. We as meditators are very lucky because we have an alternative way to disengage. We can recharge and reconnect with the experiences of our lives through our concentration and our Vipassana meditation. And when we concentrate, especially, point of my talk, there's this joy that accompanies it. So when I write, I feel joy. When I draw, I feel joy. Activities like skiing, music, cooking, people get when they get in the zone, they really enjoy it. Learning, observing, dancing, or just quieting the mind. All of this requires this stability of attention. It brings a certain joy with it, a natural joy as the mind settles. You can imagine why people want to be surgeons, because what they're doing is so observant, so demanding and encompassing. When you're a surgeon, you have someone's life in your hands. It's very important and very technical and difficult. So it's really challenging, and the concentration is huge, and there's a joy that comes with that. I've heard people say that kayaking, I've never kayaked, but there's a lot of rapture that goes with kayaking, even though you're in a cramped little boat and the water's cold. But the intensity of the sport brings this brightness along with it. So, Vipassana and concentration. Vipassana meditation, at its essence, is kind of opening the mind, seeing clearly, taking in the entire field of reality. Whereas concentration is focusing down to something small, like the breath or a candle flame. So we use those two techniques together, noticing the in-breath, noticing the out-breath, noticing everything that's happening. And it's very powerful as part of our meditation practice. So that's kind of what I wanted to say tonight. I have a bunch more, but I think I'll stop. And we can open this up and have some discussion. I'd love to hear what you think, what this brought up for you, anything that comes to you on the subject. Yeah, Jen, you guys don't need me to recognize you. Feel free to just unmute yourself and speak. And, if two people speak at once, one of you will give way.
Thank you. Mary Helen, I wanted to mention one thing, and then I have a question. Chiron is also the name for the wounded healer in Greek archetype, or it's a Greek name that's used, I think, to it comes up in Jungian archetypes. Chiron, spelled with an I, not a Y. I just thought that was cool. Different.
It's very cool because it's named after this company. So whoever named the company may have been alluding to something in the Greek. Great, thank you. I'll look into that.
And then my question, I like this exploration of concentration. And my question is, I've heard some of our teachers, and maybe you've said it too, that there's this practice of sort of like collecting or gathering oneself. And I just wanted to know if you feel like that's somewhat hitched to this idea of concentration. Is it like that's another way you would define it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good gathering. I think is a great word because when you concentrate, you need to bring everything in. to one place, kind of, don't you? Which is what gathering is. And focus all your attention on the in breath and all your attention on the out breath as best you can. And stay with that. So it's definitely gathering all the little pieces and distractions and lists and people and places and things, and just you gather all that. You don't even shoot it, you gather it. I like that idea much better, that you just bring it all together. Everything that is with you.
Cool. And then I like that idea that you gave us too about the idea of concentric circles. Like maybe there's kind of a winnowing as you're drilling down deeper, that certain things are just going to fly a little bit
Yeah.
out because that's not really the central focus right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. This is really interesting stuff. I really appreciate it.
Isn't it interesting that concentration and concentric are from the same root? I like that a lot. I've been thinking about that for a while.
So
Mary,
Mary,
isn't
this-
this also, aren't the concentration practices part of the jhanas?
Yes, the jhanas are an exploration of deep concentration practices and entering into um, deep states of concentration, very specific states. They have names, and you know when you're in one. I mean, you start with the first jhana and you get comfortable there, and then you move to the second one and you get comfortable there, and you and when the Joseph and Jack and John, and when all those guys brought meditation back from Asia, they didn't bring the jhanas.
Hmm.
And there was no jhana teaching in the Spirit Rock IMS world that we belong to for a long time. It wasn't until, well, there was a wonderful teacher, Ayakima, and her, a German woman, and she taught jhana. And her lineage holder is Lee Brasington.
Yeah.
And Lee was, in the Bay Area and very much in the Spirit Rock group, same people. And so that was when Spirit Rock recognized the jhana practice and okayed it. They were just kind of scared because jhana practice really requires a good teacher. You don't want to do it on your own. You want to find Lee Brasington or somebody else who knows what they're doing. And they were worried about people getting in trouble with it, so they just didn't teach it. So, but then they eased up, and now Lee Brasington became a Spirit Rock teacher, and that's at peace. And I did several jhana retreats with him, and you get a little addicted to the jhanas because they're so joyful, they're so wonderful, and you have to watch it. And that's what that they were worried about that too. But it usually is temporary. It certainly was very temporary for me.
So is that the kind of trouble you can get into, getting
That's
addicted?
exactly right. It's a drug.
Thank you.
how do you spell jhana?
Jhana. You just, with Polly, you just sprinkle the H's around, right?
So I have a question. We just got out of a retreat with Ken talking about Dzogchen, and he used the word shamatha a lot as calmness, and he defined it as abiding in calmness. And I was reading an article in our in-between times in Tricycle, and they defined shamatha as concentration. So I'm wondering if you can expand on that a little bit for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, shamatha vipassana, concentration vipassana, same subject. Shamatha is another word for concentration, and in many contexts, that's how it's used. And I gave this talk to the Auburn group a couple months ago, and I used the word shamatha, but tonight I decided just to use the word concentration to not be confusing. But shamatha means tranquility, it means concentration, and it is that practice of settling and really becoming tranquil and peaceful. And concentration is the powerful way to do that. And as I said, Vipassana and shamatha work together, and that the special um, amazing thing that Buddhism does is put those two together.
Thank you.
Oh, Mary Helen, one of the things I wanted to share is, um, you had mentioned kayaking, and being on the water, and especially in a non-motorized boat, um, is such a beautiful opportunity to practice concentration, because it kind of quiets all the others for a moment. You're just present with what is, enjoying, the peacefulness of the water and the sights of nature and birds and the sky. And I think that just being in nature like that, those sensory experiences are so powerful that you're able, like, it takes away the wanting. You're just present in what is. So it's very similar to the flow of, if you're in writing or doing something with a lot of concentration, it's like that moment you forget that you're wanting anything else. You're just present. And then that really, is a glimpse of what concentration can be like. You forget the past and the present, and you're just, or the past and the future, and you're just in the moment. And so it's a beautiful practice that I highly recommend.
Kayaking.
Yeah. Or paddleboarding, canoeing, something non-motorized boating, so you don't have it's just much more quiet and peaceful. You can hear the lapping of the water through the paddle. Yeah, and there's ways, you go in the summertime where you're not cold.
Thank you so much. I was really surprised when a couple of different articles that I read on concentration, when they were trying to liken it to daily activities that we do, not in meditation, mentioned kayaking. And I thought, wow, I didn't know it was a religious activity.
Yeah.
But apparently it is. And that's
Yeah.
just great. Thank you.
So all those fishermen out there that have been, going and escaping their daily life, they're out there, practicing a form of meditation, unless they're talking to their buddy, drinking some beers. But, a lot of it is, just being out there in nature and just being present, because I think concentration, meditation, why it's so blissful, in whatever activity we do. And if we can do it while we're sitting, and not needing help from another thing, is just being present and dropping all the dislikes and likes, the grasping, the holding. And it's just like you're in the moment. You forget time and space. You're just present.
And I can add to that, sailing is the same experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I wouldn't call it quiet, but there's lots of concentration in the wind and the way the sail is rigged and where you're going, and looking further in the future, how the wind might be changing on the water. So I've had that experience in the past, and it's also a very joy-filled experience.
Thanks, Philip. I read a great quote from the French philosopher Michel de Montaigne, and he said, I was looking to see if I could look it up, but I can't find it, but I think I can remember it. He said, the mark of wisdom is cheerfulness in daily life. Isn't that great? I mean, it's so Buddhist. It's about being happy. And because we think wisdom, oh, you have to understand, relativity theory or something, but no. Anyway,
I like to think I like to think along with happy is contentment. It feels, happiness kind of feels transitory to me. Contentment feels like, a deep, abiding sense of pleasure in life and joy and understanding and just kind of feeling blessed.
Yeah. And also cheerfulness struck me as a word because it's sort of anticipating that things are going to work out. And that's what, if you have wisdom, you kind of know how things can work out. So I like the word cheerfulness too. Happiness doesn't have such a good rap right now, I think. I don't know why. But I think it's still a good word. Probably was more powerful in the Buddha's time than it is in America today. Whatever the Pali word is.
Mary Helen, I think the reason why happiness has a bad rap is because when people are working towards that goal of happiness, now I think there's so much pressure. People feel pressure to be happy. If they're not happy, then something's wrong. And so then the pushback is like, well, why should we be happy? So I think it's just, another word that makes people feel pressure to be something other than what they are.
Right.
And
Very
that,
good.
and
Very
all
good.
that,
That's right. Yeah.
all the stipulations that come with when
Yeah.
we overuse a word.
Hmm. I remember my stepmother, who was a pretty wise woman, saying to me that your goal in life can't be happiness. Happiness has to be, this is like a different subject a little bit, but your goal in life needs to be something else, and the happiness is a byproduct. But you shouldn't have your goal in life as being happy. That was interesting. I've always kind of think there's something there. We are getting to our time when I want to do a little metta. And then, Jen, do you have some things to share tonight when I'm done? Okay, let me do the metta and we'll close. Does anybody have anything burning that they would like to say before we do the metta?
I just can't imagine Jen not having something to share. That's all.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's just come back into a meditative posture for a moment and feel the body and kind of wake up your toes and your legs and your abdomen and your torso and your chest and your head and your arms and your hands. Everybody's awake. And come into the body and bringing attention to the area of the heart. Breathing into the heart and feeling our what makes us human, our capacity for friendliness, for kindness, for gentleness, for caring for ourselves, for caring for one another, for loving kindness. We have that capacity. And for most people, it's maybe easiest to feel in the heart, in the area of the heart. I think that area really is wired in ways that science doesn't understand yet. So I like to put my hand there and feel those feelings and how they come up so beautifully. So let's start out by sending this loving kindness to ourselves, wishing for ourselves that we be happy, that we find wisdom, that we're cheerful, that we have all those nice on. Wishing that for ourselves. And now let's wish that for everybody here in our Zoom room together. Just, we're not in the same room, but we're wired together, so we can send and receive instantaneously at the speed of light with those wires. So we can send good wishes to each other. Send kindness, gentleness, caring, fellowship. We're all working together to walk the Dharma path. How lovely that we're here together tonight, sharing this. Just breathing into the room, sending kindness to everybody here, sending good wishes, sending loving kindness. And now let's expand. Let's stay on those wires and let's send good wishes to all the people on the planet who are logged in, who are on the internet. Everybody who's got a wire or even wireless. All the people who are on this connection with us. Sending them all over the world, Palestine, Afghanistan, China, the Pacific Islands, New York, Lisbon, South Africa, Chile. Sending good wishes to people around the world, everyone who's online, and now bring in everyone who's not online, because they're online too. They just don't have a wire right now. But we're all online. The human race has a line. So everybody on this planet, all beings, wishing, sending them good wishes, kindness, gentleness, sending them the best wishes for their happiness, for their cheerfulness, for their seeing the bright side. Breathing in and breathing out kindness, generosity, and beyond this planet, whatever beings there may be. We have no idea, but may all beings everywhere be happy, be cheerful, be safe, be peaceful. May all beings everywhere awaken and be free.
Thank you so much, Mary Helen. Hello,
Thank you all.
everyone. Happy Thanksgiving week. I just have a few announcements. I'd like to thank the 6 Sangha friends who came out and offered temple care this Saturday.